Hello all and welcome to the GMAT Advanced Target 700 series. Today we are going to see the 18th installment of the verbal part of the whole series. And today we are going to discuss a very crucial topic. It is of course a part of the critical reasoning series. In the last two installments of the video, we saw that, how understanding the primary argument is so crucial in cracking a critical reasoning question. Okay. And today we are going to discuss one of the most important question types in the GMAT exam, which is the strengthening and weakening question type. So why strengthening and weakening is the most important question type is, in a way it borrows from what we discussed in the first two sessions. In the first two sessions, we saw that, understanding the argument at its core, understanding what the passage is trying to say in its most fundamental manner is very important, right? And in any critical analysis question, you will see that the argument is the heart of the question, or the argument is the heart of the passage. And the strengthening and weakening questions, they ask you to interpret that argument in the light of some additional information which might be presented as part of the options, which might be kind of implicit in the passage itself, which might also be something that you might need to infer, so it kind of has a bearing on all the different components that make up a particular passage, right? So today we are going to see some examples of strengthening and weakening questions. As I said, singularly, they are probably the most important question types. One, because they are very frequent. They are very frequently asked in the GMAT exam. So there is a high chance you will encounter some of them in your actual exam. And the second is because, as I said, they are the closest that will, they are the closest question type that will ever be, which will kind of help you in analyzing a passage at its, most sound reasoning. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into the question and let us see what the question says. It says a proposed ordinance requires the installation in new homes of sprinklers automatically triggered by the presence of fire. However, a home builder argued that because more than 90% of residential fires are extinguished by a household member, the residential sprinklers would only marginally decrease property damage caused by residential fires. Right? Now, what is the primary argument? Okay, let's catch hold of the primary argument. Now, let us first see what are the three different elements. So you have a new ordinance which requires the installation of automatic sprinklers. Okay, let's say they are automatic sprinklers. Now, if there is an automatic sprinkler in your house, it is going to be a very useful device, right? That as soon as there is a fire in any part of the house, basically you don't have to do anything, and the sprinkler will automatically start and kind of douse the fire, right? But the builder is saying that more than 90% of residential fires are extinguished by a household member. Okay, which means it does not require the use of any particular system. Okay, or those systems do not exist, maybe. Hence, he says residential sprinklers would only marginally decrease property damage. Now, the question says which of the following, if true, would most seriously weaken the home builder's argument? The home builder's argument being that residential sprinklers would only marginally decrease property damage. Okay, this is the home builder's argument. Now, what would be the one thing that, if proven true, would kind of knock this off? Now, even before you read the options, this guy has based his reasoning on the fact that 90% of residential fires are extinguished by a household member. Now, even before I'm reading this, the options, I'm trying to figure out an option that will kind of show this whole process of the residential fire being doused by a residential member in poor light. Okay, probably we want to show that these guys are they, of course, they douse the fire, but they, spend a lot of time before they come and douse the fire. Or maybe, they douse the fire 90% of the time simply because there is no automatic sprinkler. Okay. Or probably if the automatic sprinkler comes in, there are many other new types of fires that will get doused. Okay. So I'm thinking on those lines. What is it that can, weaken the argument about humans being able to douse fires? Let's look at the options. Now, most individuals have no formal training in how to extinguish fires. Now, a lot of you might get confused by this option, and you will think that this is very, very related. Now, see, they do not talk about whether training is there or not. Even in the question, we see that they are extinguished by household members. We are not interested in how well they were able to extinguish it. Okay, just the reality is that they were able to extinguish it. A lot of you, however, will think that they have no formal training, right, in how to extinguish fires. Hence, what should we do? We should probably get sprinklers. Okay, because people do not have a formal training, and hence we should get sprinklers. And what sprinklers will do is that replace this formal training, and hence they would weaken the home builder's argument that says that sprinklers would only marginally decrease property damage, right? See, if you look at this particular sentence in isolation, whether they have formal training or not, okay, if they have no formal training, probably we can give them formal training. Or what I can do, I can replace them with probably, we can have some trained community members who can help. Nothing about this says about automatic sprinklers, whereas we are looking for a case of making automatic sprinklers look more attractive. Okay, so hence this definitely is not our right option. Option B says, since new homes are only a tiny percentage of available housing in the city, the new ordinance would be extremely narrow in scope. Okay, now a lot of people might get confused with this option as well. Okay, because the passage talks about marginally decreasing property damage. Okay, now if you look at this option, it says only a tiny percentage of available housing. Okay, new homes, because this ordinance applies to new homes, the new ordinance would be extremely narrow in scope. It is probably weakening the need for an ordinance. I agree that. What does this weaken? It weakens the need of ordinance. But do we have to weaken the need of the ordinance? Is that the primary question here? No, because we have to weaken the home builder's argument. And what is the home builder's argument? The home builder's argument is that it would only marginally decrease property damage caused by residential fires. Okay, so even in those small subset of homes, we have to fight the assumption that the builder has. Okay, so option B also is attacking a different argument. We want to attack the home builder's argument, which is the primary question. Okay, then let's look at option C. The installation of smoke detectors in new residences costs significantly less than the installation of sprinklers. Now, what is this weakening? If there was a comparison between smoke detectors and sprinklers, okay, what is this argument doing? This is weakening sprinklers versus they're saying that smoke detectors are better. But is it weakening the home builder's argument? Again, I'm saying stick to the argument. In critical reasoning, the trick is to always keep sticking to the argument. Okay. It is talking again, it is very much like option B, right? Let's look at option D. In the city where the ordinance was proposed, the average time required by the fire department to respond to a fire was less than the national average. Okay. Now spend some time on this question, take some seconds or minutes to go through it. Even if you have to kind of pause the video, pause it and just look at this statement. Okay, for those of you who need more time, you can pause this video and then resume it later. Now the option D says in the city where the ordinance was proposed, the average time required by the fire department to respond to a fire was less than the national average, which means the fire department there is probably quicker than the fire department in most of the other places, which means the effectiveness of sprinklers in this state versus the other states is going to be slightly lesser. Okay, what is this one comparing? This is comparing sprinklers versus fire department. Again, is this the kind of argument that I'm trying to evaluate here? No, because I want the home builder's argument to be weakened. Hence D also goes out. Let's look at option E. The largest proportion of property damage that results from residential fires is caused by fires that start when no household member is present. Perfect. Look at the passage. If the home builder is saying that 90% of residential fires are extinguished by a household member. But when will he extinguish the fire? When he is home, right? If he is not home, then how is he going to extinguish the fire? Okay. And the largest proportion of property damage. Okay. Fire is one thing. Okay. Probably there is a small fire which does not have any impact on property. Or fire can be as big that it can engulf the entire house and burn the entire house down. Option E says the largest proportion of property damage results, that results from residential fires is caused by the fires that start when no household member is present. Now, if I only told you option E, what is the solution that you would propose? The solution that you would propose is that get automatic sprinklers in place, because people are not at home, and if there is a fire, they will definitely not be able to put it up. And we know for sure that the largest proportion of property damage is caused by these fires. Okay, so it will support sprinklers, and when it will support sprinklers, it would weaken the home builder's argument, because the home builder basically is opposing sprinklers. Okay, he's talking about efficiency and everything, but you can very clearly say that he is not very enthused by the whole idea. Okay, option E becomes the answer. Okay, now I'm taking a lot of time with each option and each line of thinking, because what I want you to do is develop a strategy or develop an approach which involves looking at very, very fundamental aspects. Where is the argument going? Which option is looking at an argument in a particular way, and so on and so forth. Because that is the most important in critical reasoning. Okay. Let's look at this question. Okay. It says to prevent a newly built dam on the Chif River from blocking the route of fish migrating to breeding grounds upstream, the dam includes a fish path, a mechanism designed to allow fish through the dam. Before the construction of the dam and fish path, several thousand fish a day swam upriver during the spawning season. But in the first season after the project's completion, only 300 per day made the journey. Clearly, the fish pass is defective. Okay. What is the primary argument here? It is very easy to identify. The primary argument is the fish pass is defective. What do we have to do? We have to weaken the argument. What does it mean? It means we have to show that the fish pass is not defective, right? What is the data that has been presented for us? It says before the construction, several thousand fish a day swam. After the construction, 300 per day are swimming. There is something wrong for sure, but we have to prove that it's not the gate. It is some other tangible or acceptable reason. Okay, let's look at the option. Fish that have migrated to the upstream breeding grounds do not return down the Shif River again. Now, if that is the case, then every year this thing would happen. Okay, and before the dam was constructed, every year during the spawning season, thousands of fish were going up, right? So this cannot be the reason for sure. Because if that is the reason, this should have applied to the time period that was before the dam construction. Okay, let's look at option B. On other rivers in the region, the construction of dams with fish passes has led to only small decrease in the number of fish migrating upstream. Now, this is something that is completely unrelated. Okay, you can say that this is unrelated data. Probably we could have used this to answer something else, but definitely not our question. Because what is it saying? It's saying that in another river where conditions were completely different, probably the dam was very, very different. We don't even know if that dam has this kind of a gate. Okay. And if it led to small decreases, okay, fine. But we cannot say anything on that basis about this particular dam. Option C says that the construction of the dam stirred up potentially toxic river sediments that were carried downstream. Okay, now this is something which can make our case. If the construction of the dam stirred up very potentially toxic river sediments, then a lot of fish might have died because of these sediments, and they were carried downstream. Hence, the fish pass is not responsible. The dam is responsible, but the fish pass is not responsible. And you have to make a distinction between the dam and the fish pass. They are not the same thing. Okay, dam in this case is responsible. Fish pass is not responsible. And we have to analyze the argument that the fish pass is defective. Probably the whole dam is defective. The construction of the dam is defective. But we don't care. We have to figure out whether the fish pass is defective. This is a very good option choice in front of us. Let's look at the other options before we can finalize. Option D says populations of migratory fish in the Shif River have been declining slightly over the last 20 years. Now, you see, if this was the case, then the whole thing should have been very gradual. Okay, what does the option say? It says several thousand of fish a day swam up river during the spawning season, but in the first season after the project's completion, only 300 per day made the journey, which is a drastic drop. Several thousand to 300. This is nothing but a very, very drastic drop. Now you cannot say that this is, a slight decline. This is a drastic decline, right? So if it was decreasing over the last 20 years, then in the preceding year and in this year, there should not have been a difference of thousands versus hundreds. Hence, this option also goes out. During spawning season, the dam releases sufficient water for migratory fish below the dam to swim upstream. Okay, this again has new information. Okay, but what will I do with this? Okay, this is just info. New info. Okay, not no information. I cannot do anything, right? So the dam is releasing sufficient water, which means there is all the more reason for there to be no decline in the fish population. But we know for sure that the fish population has declined. Hence, option E also goes out. Right? So, today we are going to discuss only these two questions, but the primary aim here is that you understand strengthening and weakening very, very well. And strengthening and weakening is nothing but in exercise in isolating the argument and having a laser sharp focus on your argument. No matter what new information comes your way, no matter what option sounds very doubting, what you have to do is you have to maintain your focus on your primary argument, because most of the questions in probably 90 to 95% of the questions, you would have to look at for the option that is strengthening or weakening the primary argument. It could be a secondary argument also, and that would depend on the questions, but in most cases you would be looking or evaluating the option that strengthens or weakens the primary argument. Hence, isolate, focus, and stick to the primary argument. So we'll also do some questions going forward on strengthening and weakening. So you can go through the next video in this particular series for more questions. For people who have not seen the previous videos for critical reasoning, I would suggest that you go back and look at the previous two videos on critical reasoning, where we have discussed how to kind of approach critical reasoning with a first principles approach. People who want to develop their skills in reading comprehension, part 1 to 15 of the series cover reading comprehension in great detail. I would suggest that you go through all of them. They are 20 to 30 minute videos. They are designed to give you the maximum bang for the buck, give you a very high return on investment on the time that you invest in these videos. All right, so I'll see you in the next video. Till then, keep preparing.